Okay, this tutorial is specifically related to the angles part in 7.2 in our Math 830 curriculum. And it's fairly short, and we're just going to do a couple examples here. But most of the stuff you can check through and find some good background knowledge in your textbook there on page 224 and so forth. But just to review real quickly what we need to remember, what angles are and their terminology is all given there. For example, we call the bottom side or the side that we start with the initial side, and the other side, the one that is moved around, the terminal side. If you have an angle that's moving upwards from the initial side, it is a positive angle. If you have an angle that is moving downwards from the initial side, then you have a negative angle. You can also think of it in terms of a clock. If you're rotating around a clock in this clockwise type of motion, then you're looking at negative, and if you're rotating around the clock in a counterclockwise motion, you have a positive angle. Then we have to remember quadrants as they're on the Cartesian plane. Quadrants and also the points on the Cartesian plane that are degree points. If we start here right with our x-axis, the 0 degrees mark is right along the x-axis. Then the 90-degree mark is up here, 180 mark, 270, and then back to 0, which would then be a full circle, would give us 360. Here we have our quadrant 1, where both y and x points are positive. Here we have our quadrant 2, where x is negative, yet y is positive. In quadrant 3, both the x and y points, x here, y here, being negative. And here in quadrant 4, the x point would still be a positive, whereas the y point would be negative. Okay, and I'm going to move this up a little bit here, so we're still in the field of view. And here we have a coterminal angles, as they're explained on page 226. Coterminal angles are two angles that have the same terminal side, but different angle measures. Here's an example of a small angle here. And a coterminal angle, if we went one time completely around and then back to that terminal side, we get a coterminal angle. Formula is on page 226. All it states is that if you multiply this here other angle by 360 or some factor of 360, like for example, if you doubled it and got a 720 and went around twice and went back to that angle, you would have a coterminal angle. So I'm going to just do a couple simple examples in this area just to show what we're looking at here, and simply classify each of these in the proper quadrant and draw the angle. So I'm going to do that for you here. With a negative 75-degree angle, we would know that that would be going down, and if we were to draw that, it would not get to the negative 90-degree mark, which would be down here. So it would only go about there. So we know that this then would be our angle, and this would be the fourth quadrant. Similarly, with the 160, we would know that negative 160, we're going to go down from the initial side. The initial side is always the positive x-axis, by the way. So we go 9 degrees. If we went all the way up to here, that would be negative 180. So it's not quite to there. So there is our negative 160 angle. And obviously we can see that that's in the third quadrant. Okay, here we have some positive angles. Okay, 410, well, we'd have to go completely around once. That would give us 360. Yet if we added 90 to 360, we would get 450, which would be too big. So it doesn't quite get there. Goes only about that far. So that's our 410, and that's in the first quadrant. Okay, and finally for 825, well, if I went around completely twice, that would be 360 times 2, which would give us our 720, which would still not be enough. So we go around twice at least. Once, twice. Now if I were to take my 720 and add 90 to it, I would have 810. So it's going to go past the 90 mark on the next revolution. Okay, so I'm sitting up there. That's 720 plus 90, which would be 810. And I need 15 more degrees, so I could go a little ways out like that. So here we would have our fourth drawing here. And there's our angle, and that would be in the second quadrant. And there's some examples of how to draw angles that are coterminal and how to locate their quadrants. We're going to be looking specifically at the trigonometric functions next section.